People don't leave companies. They leave cultures where they don't feel valued. Welcome to the Appreciation at Work podcast, where we share real stories from leaders building workplaces that teams don't want to leave. I'm your host, Dr. William Attaway. It is an honor today to have Krista Kindley on the podcast. Krista, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I would love to start with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners, where you are, what you do, and how you've been using the Appreciation at Work materials.
Yes. I'm in North Carolina. I actually live in Salisbury, and I work for the Family and Children's Resource Program, which is actually housed with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Social Work. That's a lot. And so within our particular organization, we focus on expanding the capacity of other organizations, social work and human service organizations. We do a lot of research and best practice work to create continuing education courses for the child welfare workforce and other human service groups across the state. We also provide facilitation and even some coaching when organizations are going through change management.
I love that. I imagine that's very rewarding in what you're doing.
It is because I have 16 years of experience in child welfare at the county or public level. And so being on this end of things to get to really show care, compassion, and support for the workforce, it
Yeah.
really is satisfying for me at this time in my life.
I love that. So how did you become familiar with Appreciation at Work?
Well, it was kind of happenstance, right? I'm sure most people will say that. Really and truthfully, the first step for me was my own spiritual journey, wanting to become my own source of appreciation for myself
Mm,
and becoming less reliant on needing affirmation from other people. And
good.
so that landed me at studying a little bit about the difference between gratitude and appreciation.
Mm,
And I began to recognize that gratitude, although fantastic, still relies on a positive emotional response to what someone does or doesn't do for me. However, appreciation causes me to look deeper than that, to look for the source of humanity, to appreciate patience, to
mm,
appreciate when people share collaboration, to appreciate when people share asking tough questions that make us think.
mm.
And so I
That's good.
recognize that by understanding better the difference between those two words and meanings, then I actually landed on a book. It was about a culture of appreciation. I think it's Frank Damasio. Then from there, which talks about culture of appreciation within faith communities. From there, it's then next on my path was the culture of appreciation content with the workplace appreciation.
Oh, I love that. So what was your initial reaction when you approached the 5 languages of appreciation?
It felt familiar. I
Mm,
had also done previous work with the 5 languages or love languages by Dr.
mhm.
Chapman.
Yes.
And so I was really excited for that content to be integrated with organizational wellness concepts and strategies. That was actually exciting for me because remember, my background is child welfare, and child welfare organizations, whether they're public or private, are very tough places to work.
Mm, mm. So what does this look like in an environment that is tough? Like, is this something that you felt was an easy application and an easy implementation, or did you have to struggle a little bit with it?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's first struggling first with understanding myself best. I already knew what were my primary love languages personally, and then how did that cross over into the workplace? And I began noticing based off experiences I had whether I felt appreciated or not. So
Mm,
I think that's one of the toughest parts, like it is with everything. It's self awareness first, right?
yes.
So I
Yes.
can then begin to be genuinely curious about the languages, appreciation languages of other people that I work with and care about.
Mm, mm. I think that's so well said, and I would challenge our listeners, that if you haven't started with yourself first, that is where you begin. It's very difficult to help somebody else with something you haven't wrestled through yourself. And I think you start there, and that's so well done. As you begin to then understand yourself better and begin to say, "Okay, now how can I understand the people that I'm working with or serving better?" What did that begin to look?
Well, first of all, self awareness first is definitely a social work concept. So is the dignity and worth of every person, which is part of our code of ethics.
Yes.
And so the first thing I just kind of put together to see how our organization would respond was I called it the appreciation station.
Hmm.
It's literally a very simple document that is housed in Teams. And it's a very simple table where you go in and you can type appreciation for someone or a group of people, and you leave your name as the author, and then you notify the individuals that you've expressed appreciation for, that triggers them to get an email to say, go check out the document.
Nice. I love that. What a great idea. What was the response to that when you started implementing it?
Well, eh, the response that I gauged was how often was this being used?
Mm.
And it took a little bit to try to explain to people the appreciation station. If you know me personally, I'm a little strange. But my colleagues who I've worked with for 8 or 9 years now, they get me in a way they used to not, right? So they were like, "Okay, well, let me learn a little bit more about this." And
Nice.
I can see that over time when people began to see their names listed and be triggered, so to speak, to go look at the document, I think that it kinda caught on some. And again, depending on personality, there are some of us that use it far more often than others. And then personally, I really use it as a mindful tool to kind of pause and think about not just about what's being accomplished, but what contributions am I experiencing from people that have nothing to do with what they've written, what they've
Mm.
taught, what they've spoken about. It goes back to when I mentioned earlier, even the colleague that asked tough questions,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
We
That's so
can't
good.
calculate that into a, work productivity formula, but that is so needed. Or
Well, it's
my
so true.
peers that are, way more curious about technology than I am. They bring that, right? So that curiosity and desire of technology and for us to evolve that way is helpful, whether it's being put into this particular product in this moment or not.
Mm.
So I think for me, it's also, I don't put my own appreciation notes on our document for myself, but it also gives me the opportunity to create that space I mentioned at the very beginning. How can I appreciate how I'm showing up? Whether my
Mm.
product was everything I wanted it to be or not, whether the class seemed to have left satisfied or not, how can I appreciate my heartfelt efforts, intent, and desire for people to feel supported, seen, and understood?
I love that. I love treating people, how you describe treating people with dignity and with respect. I think that really gets at the core of why we do what we do at Appreciation at Work. We believe that there is inherent value in every human being, you know, and I think that comes through so loud and clear with what you're saying here in this tool that you created in Teams to help your team begin to show this to one another. So which appreciation language resonates most with you personally?
Words of affirmation.
Me too. That's mine as well. Well, why do you think that is?
That's a great question. Why would that be so important to me? I think because I'm a highly sensitive person. And I think one of the things I've learned about myself is that when someone expresses appreciation, it means more to me. It's almost like an invisible hug. That's how it feels to me. So the opposite is also true. When someone says something that I perceive to be unkind or unsupportive, it also hits me much harder than it would someone who's not highly sensitive.
Oh, that's so good.
So that's the way I've thought about my primary language of appreciation. And I've also, this has been really fun, worked to become more conscious to use this even in the classroom
Oh,
with
how so?
learners. The folks that we have in continuing education courses, everything from bachelor's on up to doctorate degrees, right? And so working intentionally to say to someone, I really appreciate how you step into a leadership role every time we have small group work.
Mm,
Or I really appreciate the way that I see you offering support for your peer who's, sharing a lot of hard things that they've experienced recently. So that has also brought me satisfaction as a teacher. And I did
I
not
love that.
really expect that to have that big of an impact.
Oh, that's so good. Do you ever find yourself in a situation with maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's in a classroom setting, and you're speaking appreciation in a way that is not landing for somebody else? Maybe you're speaking out of your own language, but that's not theirs. You ever found yourself in that situation?
Often,
Yeah.
because
What
I
do you
think,
do?
well, that's a great question. I try to think real quick on my feet in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that as a social worker and as a teacher, I'm trained to watch all of those cues. And I think that I can first say when I've noticed that maybe someone's not really understanding exactly what I'm saying, I've noticed that because perhaps they're not accustomed to being appreciated for who they are.
Mm,
That's
mm.
unfamiliar to them. They're accustomed to being appreciated for what they do.
Wow.
And so, depending on the length of the class, I will continue to try to express appreciation for who they are and how they're showing up. And I've noticed that over time, they begin to notice that and better understand it because someone is treating them in a different way. And, a couple of our courses, we briefly talk about the languages of appreciation, briefly,
Mm,
not enough.
yeah.
But also being able to demonstrate examples of this to others is very important. But I think this concept of appreciating people for who they are and not just what they do, unfortunately, it's very foreign.
Mm, mm. That is unfortunate, and that's something we're trying to change. You
Yes,
know, we see that 94% of companies and organizations in the US have a recognition and rewards program of some type.
yes,
And recognition and rewards is all about performance. And that is important to measure. And we don't at all think you should stop measuring that because that's important.
absolutely.
But appreciation is about the person. And that's what I loved about what you just shared because you're focused in on the individual and what they contribute as a person, not just from their performance. And I think that's one of the biggest messages we're trying to get out is helping people to understand that it's a both and. We can measure performance and we can value the individual. It's a both and that's when we see high performance begin to emerge.
I appreciate you pointing that out because I think that when I first began reading the book, diving into some of the content, I really had to spend some time in my own learning style wrestling with this. What is the difference between recognition and appreciation in the workplace? And one of the things that really helped it click for me, which I think our appreciation station here at the Family and Children's Resource Program is that appreciation can go from peer to peer. It can go from me to the director of our organization. It can go from me to anyone else that's on that org chart. In other
Yes,
words, I don't have to have some kind of organizational formal authority to be
that's
able
right.
to express appreciation to someone.
Yes.
That is so powerful to me.
Well, I love that, and that's exactly what we teach, that if it's gonna be authentic in an organization's culture, then it has to flow every direction. It cannot just flow top down. It
Absolutely.
has to flow side to side, bottom up, top down, every direction, because that's when it's real. That's when it's authentic, and people smell authenticity, and they smell inauthenticity. And I think our job as leaders is to create the type of culture that we wanna live in. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing.
Well, I'm working on it. You
It's
know,
always a work in progress, isn't it?
working on it, even, because we also work a lot virtually. And so I laughed so out loud recently by myself because I realized, okay, one of the hardest or one of the most challenging languages of appreciation is physical touch, right? And you all share about why you at first even considered not even including that in content because of human resources and harassment and all those things. But it was so funny one day when I ran across the idea of a virtual high five. And I was so excited for coming up with that idea. And I thought, that's funny to me that I'm so excited over a virtual high five. That sounds so nerdy. But when you take time to really, again, know yourself well first and continue to learn about yourself, and then you want to do your best to speak in the appreciation languages of those that you work with, I mean, you do get excited when you feel like you have a breakthrough moment
That's right.
of another idea, especially if it's physical touch.
That's so good. I love that. The virtual high five.
Hmm.
I don't think that's nerdy at all. I think that's great.
Well, thank you for that.
In your experience, you've been doing this for a minute. In your experience, do you see appreciation languages showing up differently across generations?
Wow, what a fantastic question. I would have to say yes, because for all the other reasons, when we think about what shapes Krista into being Krista as I am now, right? I think about the culture, the family culture in which I was raised, the community, the faith experiences I've had. And then on top of that, even societal shifts like us being willing to try to talk about mental wellness, right?
Yes. Yes.
And neurodivergence and all of these things that, earlier when I was a child, and I'm sure in my mom's, generation, you didn't talk about these things. And so I think that that might contribute to our ability and willingness, some of us, to be able to talk more about these things. And though at the same time, I think depending on our own family, families of origin, it can be harder for some and easier for others. My family of origin doesn't talk like this. Right. And so I'm a mom, so I have a teenager and I've worked really hard, especially in those challenging parenting moments,
That's right.
right, to verbally express what I'm appreciating about whatever she is or isn't doing, while at the same time, needing to maybe provide some unsolicited direction. So I think that's another way that it can impact us personally is how we begin to use it and introduce it to our families and our extended families. And all of those things, wherever we volunteer in the community, wherever we go, we carry this opportunity with us. And I do think that generational experiences has a lot to do with someone's how easily they can pick up on it, and then their willingness to even consider this as something as valuable as it is.
Mm, that's so good. It is, I think, often, particularly with kids, it's more caught than it is taught. We talk about it, and
Yes.
this is something that but we have 2 girls, one's in grad school and one's in college now, and one of the things that they have done as they have grown up is We've gone through a number of different assessments and exercises and trying to help them learn who they are and how they are wired. Because I believe every person is created intentionally, and I believe
Yeah.
every person is wired differently. And if you understand yourself, it's going to help you for the rest of your life. It's a journey. You continue to do that. And I love that you bring that up when it was touching even into the family environment. Often I find in the workplace, people want to put up these walls and say, oh, well, what happens at home doesn't affect what happens at work, and what happens at work doesn't affect what happens at home. Well, that's a cute myth. It's just not true. The reality is we are one person. And to be a person of integrity means all the parts of our life touch. As you've mentioned, I'm a person of faith too. That's a part of how I view the world. That's a
Yes.
part of how I view other people and the value of other people. And I think to say, oh, we have to wall that off, you're walling off something that's core to who I am. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think that holistic view of this, touching all the parts of your life, is so, so important for the leaders who are listening to understand that that is okay.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that that appears to be valuable to your process because it's like it's like any other skill. You're wanting to not only talk about but demonstrate for your child or children because you want to eventually see and experience that reciprocated. And although my teenager would probably disagree with this, I hear her using some of that language as well. And she's almost 15, right?
That's
But
awesome.
that's what happens when you get to blend into the culture that you create for your family that
Yes.
may or may not look much of the same as in the culture that you were raised in, right? That's a conscious decision that we get to make as adults, what we want to keep from our families of origin and culture and what we want to change. And I
Yes.
can just say in general, child welfare, period, as a profession has made me a better person.
Well, and I think you're spot on too, that as leaders, we create culture. We create culture in our family, we create culture in our workplace. And when it's often said that people don't leave a job, they leave a boss. And I
Yes.
understand the sentiment there. I would amend it slightly and say people don't leave a job, they leave a culture.
Mm.
And the leaders are the ones who create that culture. And I think that's why we have to be so intentional. If we want to build a healthy, sustainable culture over time in the workplace, then appreciation is a non-negotiable ingredient in that.
Yes, I agree with that, especially with, just so many aspects of life can feel very challenging right now. And so, being able to go to work and experience on some level of being seen or perhaps understood, helps to
Yes.
create that sense of belonging, which we know
Yes.
is so, so very important. And I'll also say, as I continue to wrestle with this personally, whether it's family, work, I think that's another reason self awareness and appreciating myself must come first because even as I work to practice this more and more at my workplace, I still don't get it perfectly, right?
Mm,
I still might be misunderstood, right? And
sure.
so it's those times that I have to have somewhere to go, which is within myself to say,
Mm,
Krista, I appreciate your intention of, wanting to help this person feel seen and understood. It might not have gone the way that I intended it to,
mm.
but that was truly what my goal was. And so I think that's another reason knowing ourselves best first and being able to be our own source of appreciation is absolutely mandatory.
So well said. Krista, this has been a joy to talk with you today. I know that people are going to want to stay connected to you and learn more from you and about what you're doing. What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can go to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill School of Social Work, and you can find me at the Family and Children's Resource Program.
Fantastic. And I'll give you the last word here. As people, as we tie a bow on this episode, what is one big takeaway that you want people to walk away from this episode with?
Thank you for that. I would say that it's not just happenstance that you've crossed paths with the languages of, workplace appreciation. I'm a firm believer that what I seek seeks me. So, this is not just, in other words, there's purpose in this path for you, no matter what role you have within an organization, this information can empower you to make a big, big difference.
What a great way to end this discussion. Krista,
Th-
thank you for your time.
Thank you.